The whir of the helicopter blades wasn't a sound typically associated with Miller's Creek, a town whose loudest excitement usually involved a contentious bingo night or the annual pie contest. For Mia, wrist-deep in dishwater at Rosie's Diner, the thrumming felt alien, a vibration that shook the chipped ceramic mugs on the shelf and rattled her teeth. She glanced out the steamy window, past the handwritten sign advertising today's soup, cream of mushroom, it's good, trust us, and saw it. Not a helicopter, as she'd first assumed, but a sleek, impossibly expensive-looking private jet, settling onto the disused airstrip on the edge of Old Man Hemlock's fallow south field. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you believe love should feel like freedom, hit that like button and subscribe. Mia dried her hands on her apron, a familiar floral pattern faded from countless washes. Jets didn't land in Miller's Creek. Ever. Especially not ones that looked like they belonged to movie stars or minor royalty. Her mind immediately went to him, Arthur. Her quiet, unassuming regular who'd occupied the corner booth, nursing a bowl of soup, almost daily for the past 3 months. He'd vanished a week ago without a word, leaving behind an unpaid bill for a tomato soup and a half-eaten grilled cheese, and an odd ache in Mia's chest she hadn't anticipated. He was a man of few words and even fewer personal details, but his silence had been a comfortable, steady presence in her often chaotic days. He'd never mentioned a penchant for private aviation. And just like that, the man whose quiet company had been a simple, warm broth in her life was about to serve her a mystery of epic proportions. Mia's world was the comforting clatter of Rosie's Diner. It was the hiss of the ancient coffee machine, the slightly too loud laugh of Rosie herself booming from the kitchen, and the predictable rhythm of her days. She knew every crack in the linoleum, every faded photograph on the wall, every regular's peculiar coffee order. After her brief, disastrous attempt at city life and an art degree that had mostly taught her how to appreciate expensive paint, Miller's Creek and Rosie's had been a soft place to land. Here, she was just Mia, the girl who could remember if you liked your toast light or dark, the one who always had a kind word, even if her own heart felt a little bruised from past disappointments. Her small apartment above the bakery smelled perpetually of yeast and sugar, a scent she found more comforting than any designer perfume. Her companion was a scruffy terrier mix named Gus, rescued from the local shelter, whose main occupations were sleeping in sunbeams and sighing dramatically if his dinner was 5 minutes late. The only implied antagonist in Mia's life was the quiet hum of unfulfilled dreams, the occasional pang of loneliness that Gus, bless his furry heart, couldn't quite soothe. But lately, even that had been muted by the presence of Arthur. He'd first appeared on a drizzly Tuesday, sliding into the corner booth with the air of a man trying to be invisible. He was tall, with unassuming clothes that looked lived in but well cared for, and eyes that seemed to absorb everything without giving much away. He'd ordered the soup of the day, split pea, Rosie's least popular offering, and read a battered paperback novel whose cover Mia couldn't quite decipher. One afternoon, about a week into his daily visits, Mia had been wiping down the counter when she noticed the local paper lying open on an adjacent table. A small, blurry photo accompanied an article about the reclusive tech billionaire, Alastair Thorne, who had apparently stepped down from his empire and vanished from public view amidst rumors of burnout. Mia had idly skimmed it, muttering to Rosie, "Imagine, just walking away from all that money. Some people have all the luck, or all the stress, I guess." She hadn't noticed Arthur flinch, almost imperceptibly, in his corner booth, his gaze fixed a little too intently on the worn pages of his book. The name Alastair Thorne meant nothing to her beyond a headline. The diner was her sanctuary, the familiar sense of frying bacon and brewing coffee a comforting blanket. The worn red vinyl of the booths, the slight wobble in Table 3, the way the afternoon sun slanted through the front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, these were the constants. And Arthur, with his quiet presence and consistent order of soup, always soup, sometimes a grilled cheese on the side, had become one of them. She found herself looking forward to his arrival, the small nod he'd give her, the rare, fleeting smile that would touch his lips if Gus, who sometimes accompanied Mia to work on slow days, wandered over to lay his head on Arthur's worn sneakers. It was in these small, unspoken moments that Mia began to feel a sliver of something akin to peace, a gentle thawing of the careful frost she'd allowed to settle around her heart. This budding sense of ease, she'd later realize, was precisely what would make the subsequent upheaval so jarring. The shift happened subtly. One afternoon, as she delivered his usual bowl of tomato soup, Arthur looked up, his gaze lingering longer than usual. "Mia," he said, his voice surprisingly deep, a little rusty from disuse. "Thank you. This is always very good." She'd been so startled he knew her name. She wore a tag, of course, but he'd never acknowledged it, that she almost dropped the accompanying crackers. "Oh, you're welcome, Arthur. Glad you like it." He nodded, then added, almost shyly, "Rosie makes a fine soup. But you always remember the extra pepper." It was such a small thing, yet it landed in Mia's chest with a surprising warmth. He noticed. He saw her, not just as the person who brought his food, but as someone who paid attention to a tiny, unspoken preference. That day, he'd actually made eye contact for a full 5 seconds, and there was a flicker of something in his usually guarded expression, a weariness, yes, but also a quiet appreciation that felt unexpectedly genuine. Mia found herself lingering a moment longer at his table. "Well, pepper makes everything better, doesn't it?" she'd offered, a small, tentative smile playing on her lips. A ghost of a smile touched his. "Sometimes, yes." The connection, fragile as a spider's thread, had been spun. Mia walked away feeling a little lighter, a little more seen. She resolved to keep being kind, to offer him this small haven of normalcy, whatever his reasons for seeking it. The next day, when Mrs. Gable, a notorious town gossip, tried to quiz Mia about the mysterious stranger in the corner, Mia had feigned ignorance. "Oh, him? Just another hungry customer, Mrs. Gable. Wants his soup, not a biography." She felt a strange protectiveness towards Arthur and his quietude. He didn't show up the day after that exchange, and an uncharacteristic anxiety fluttered in Mia's stomach until he reappeared the following afternoon, looking a little more tired, but there. The relief she felt was disproportionate and a little unsettling. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable rhythm, punctuated by these small, almost imperceptible steps towards connection. Mia learned that Arthur preferred his coffee black, no sugar, and that he always read the last page of his books first, a quirk she found endearing. She noticed the way his fingers, long and elegant despite their callous tips, would trace the rim of his soup bowl as he read, or the subtle shift in his posture when a particular song played on the diner's old jukebox. He, in turn, seemed to notice things about her too. Once, when she'd been struggling to open a stubborn jar of pickles, he'd silently risen from his booth, taken the jar, and opened it with a quiet twist before returning to his soup as if nothing had happened. The gesture was small, but it spoke volumes. She'd catch him sketching sometimes, quick, deft lines on a paper napkin that he'd immediately crumple if he thought she was watching. Once, she'd glimpsed a nearly perfect rendering of Gus, asleep by the counter, his scruffy fur captured with an artist's precision. It made her wonder about the hands that could create such beauty, yet seemed content to simply hold a spoon and turn the pages of a worn book. His clothes, though simple, jeans, faded chambray shirts, a well-worn jacket, had a certain quality to them, a subtle cut or fabric that hinted at something more than a drifter's wardrobe. And then there was the watch, an old, battered diver's watch on a simple leather strap. It looked expensive, even to Mia's untrained eye, but he wore it with such casual indifference that she dismissed the thought. There were moments of retreat, too. Days when Arthur would be even more silent than usual, his gaze distant, a shadow clinging to him that Mia couldn't penetrate. On those days, she'd simply leave his soup, offer a quiet, enjoy, and leave him to his solitude. She wouldn't push. She understood the need for quiet corners in a noisy world. Her own heart held a few of those. The personal stakes, for Mia, were deepening almost without her consent. She found herself anticipating his arrival, a small, quiet hum of expectation in her day. She'd save him the corner booth, even when Rosie grumbled about turning away paying families. She'd make sure the soup was extra hot, just the way he seemed to prefer it, though he never said so. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a profound and growing affection for this gentle, enigmatic man who asked for nothing but a bowl of soup and a little peace. One blustery afternoon, the diner was nearly empty. Arthur sat in his usual booth, a book open but unread before him. Mia, tidying up, heard his phone buzz discreetly from his jacket pocket. He glanced at it, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. He rose and stepped outside into the biting wind. Mia, wiping down a nearby table, couldn't help but overhear snippets of his hushed, urgent conversation. "Not yet. Need more time." "No, I told them. The decision is final. Just handle it." His voice, usually so soft, held a steely edge she'd never heard before. He sounded like someone used to giving orders, someone accustomed to being obeyed. He came back inside, his face pale, the earlier calm entirely gone. He picked up his book, but his eyes stared past it. He left soon after, forgetting his customary quiet nod. He didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. A week passed. Mia found herself constantly glancing at the corner booth, an unfamiliar hollow ache in her chest. Rosie, perceptive as ever, patted her shoulder. "Don't you fret, honey. Some folks are just passing through." But Mia had a feeling Arthur wasn't just passing through. His presence had felt more rooted, more deliberate than that. She missed his quiet company, the strange, unspoken understanding that had grown between them. She even missed the predictability of his soup order. The diner felt a little emptier, a little less warm. She started to resign herself to the idea that he was gone for good, another fleeting connection in a life that had seen its share of them. Then came the jet. It wasn't just the sight of it, gleaming and powerful on Hemlock's Field, that sent a shockwave through Mia. It was the man who disembarked, striding purposefully towards Rosie's diner, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the dusty Miller's Creek landscape. He was tall, silver-haired, with an air of quiet authority that brooked no argument. He entered the diner, the bell above the door tinkling almost apologetically, and the few lunchtime regulars fell silent. His gaze scanned the room and landed on Mia, who was frozen mid-wipe, a damp cloth in her hand. "Ms. Mia Thompson?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. Mia nodded, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes. My name is Charles Everton. I am here on behalf of Mr. Alistair Thorne." He paused, letting the name hang in the air. Alistair Thorne, the reclusive billionaire from the newspaper. Mia's mind reeled. Arthur? Her Arthur was Alistair Thorne? "Mr. Thorne," Everton continued, his expression unreadable, "has sent this aircraft to collect you. He requests your presence immediately. He is waiting." The diner was utterly silent save for the low hum of the ancient refrigerator. Mia could feel Rosie's astonished gaze on her, the wide eyes of the other patrons. A jet. For her. Sent by Arthur. No, Alistair. The man who ate soup and read paperbacks. Her first coherent thought was a jumble of confusion and a surprising stab of something akin to betrayal. He hadn't just been quiet. He'd been an illusion. A meticulously crafted one, it seemed. I don't understand, Mia stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Arthur. Mr. Thorne, why? Everton offered a small, almost sympathetic smile. Mr. Thorne felt it best to explain in person. He believes you are owed an explanation. And an apology. He gestured vaguely towards the door. The jet is prepared for departure. Pressure. Not a ticking clock, but the sheer, overwhelming weight of the unexpected, the impossible. Mia looked around Rosie's, at the familiar chipped counters, the faded posters, the life she knew. Then she thought of Arthur's quiet eyes, the rare smiles, the way he'd listened without judgment. The man she'd come to care for. I need a minute, she said, her mind racing. Should she go? What could he possibly want with her? A small-town waitress? Was this some kind of elaborate joke? But Everton's serious demeanor, the undeniable reality of the gleaming jet outside, suggested otherwise. Rosie, recovering her voice, bustled forward. Mia, honey, you go on. Whatever this is, you deserve to know. She squeezed Mia's arm, her eyes a mixture of shock and excitement. And for heaven's sake, ask him if he needs a good short-order cook for his fancy jet. Mia managed a weak smile. The absurdity of it all was starting to hit her. Her quiet soup-eater owned a private jet. She took a deep breath. Fear warred with curiosity, and a deeper, more insistent feeling. She needed to see him, to understand. Okay, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Okay, I'll go. She untied her apron, smoothed down her simple dress, and with a last, bewildered look at Rosie, walked out of the diner and towards the waiting jet, towards a reality she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. The flight was a blur of luxurious leather seats, hushed efficiency, and Mia's own racing thoughts. Charles Everton was polite but offered no further information, merely ensuring her comfort. As the jet descended, she saw an island, lush and green, ringed by turquoise water, with a sprawling villa nestled amongst palm trees. It was a world away from Miller's Creek, a world away from Rosie's diner, a world away from the Arthur she thought she knew. He was waiting for her on a wide, shaded veranda overlooking the ocean. Not in the worn jeans and chambray shirt she was used to, but in linen trousers and a soft, expensive-looking shirt that somehow still managed to look unassuming on him. He looked tired, lines of strain around his eyes that hadn't been there in the diner. But as she approached, a hesitant, familiar smile touched his lips. The same smile she'd seen over countless bowls of soup. "Mia," he said, his voice the same quiet baritone she remembered. "Thank you for coming." The opulence of the surroundings, the sheer unreality of it all, threatened to overwhelm her. She stood before him, hands clasped tightly, the small-town waitress facing the billionaire. "Arthur, or Alistair, I guess," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Why? Why all of this? The diner, the silence. Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" He gestured to a comfortable seating area, and she sank into a cushioned chair, feeling small and out of place. He sat opposite her, leaning forward, his gaze earnest. "I needed to escape, Mia," he said softly. "My life, it had become a cage. A gilded one, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. Board meetings, shareholders, the relentless pressure of expectation. I was losing myself. I just walked away. I ended up in Miller's Creek by chance, looking for anonymity, for a place where no one knew Alistair Thorne. And Rosie's," she prompted, needing to understand this part most of all. "Rosie's," he said, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "And you. It was real. Simple. No pretense. You served me soup. You didn't ask questions. You treated me like a person, not a headline or a bank account. Those weeks in your diner, Mia, were the most honest moments I'd had in years." Mia listened, the anger and confusion slowly giving way to a dawning understanding. She remembered the weariness in his eyes, the quiet relief when he'd sit in his booth. But why the jet? Why bring me here like this? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "My associates finally tracked me down. The anonymity was over. They insisted I return, deal with the chaos my disappearance had caused. I knew I had to leave Miller's Creek. But I couldn't leave without seeing you, without explaining. I couldn't just vanish again, not after getting to know you." His gaze was direct, vulnerable. "I owed you the truth. And honestly, Mia, I hoped you might understand. Maybe even forgive the deception." Mia looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive clothes, the private island, the billionaire identity. It was all a startling, almost surreal overlay. But beneath it, she could still see Arthur. The quiet man with the kind eyes. The man who liked her soup, who remembered she liked extra pepper. The man who sketched on napkins and read worn paperbacks. "The man I knew," she said slowly, her voice thick with emotion. "Ordered tomato soup with a grilled cheese, extra crispy. He read books with dog-eared pages and sometimes forgot to shave. This," she gestured around them, "this is a lot." He nodded, a rueful smile on his face. "It is a lot. And I understand if it's too much. My world is complicated, Mia. Far more complicated than a bowl of Rosie's mushroom soup." She met his gaze, a whirlwind of emotions inside her. Hurt, yes, at the deception, however well-intentioned. Overwhelmed, certainly. But overriding it all was the echo of the quiet connection they'd shared, the genuine fondness she felt for the man, regardless of his name or his bank balance. It was still him, she thought, a sudden clarity cutting through the confusion. Underneath the thread count and the acreage, it was the man who listened, the man who saw me. "Alistair," she said, testing the name. It felt foreign, but the man before her was undeniably familiar. "Your world might be complicated, but the Arthur I knew, he wasn't. He was just kind and quiet." She took a breath. "I think I liked him very much." A look of profound relief washed over his face. "I liked you very much too, Mia. Still do." He hesitated. "This life I have, it's not all boardrooms and pressure. There are quiet corners here too. Or there could be." A short while later, they sat on the veranda, a comfortable silence settling between them, reminiscent of their quiet moments at Rosie's. A gentle breeze rustled the palm fronds, and the scent of salt and tropical flowers filled the air. He'd had a simple tray of sandwiches and iced tea brought out, a far cry from the haute cuisine she might have expected, and a choice that touched her. "This is all still a bit much to take in," Mia admitted, tracing the rim of her glass. "From Rosie's to this." Alistair nodded. "I know, and I'm sorry for the shock of it. I never intended to deceive you, not in a malicious way. I just wanted peace, and you gave me that." He looked out at the ocean. "This world," he gestured vaguely, "it can be isolating. Those weeks in Miller's Creek, serving your soup, felt more connecting than anything I'd experienced in a long time. I want more of that genuine connection in my life." Mia smiled faintly. Well, Rosie's tomato soup is pretty hard to beat. He laughed, a genuine, relaxed sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. It is. Maybe you could teach me how to make it sometime. Perhaps, Mia said, a lightness returning to her. She was still overwhelmed, still processing, but she was also curious. This was an unexpected turn, a bizarre chapter, but the man beside her, despite the immense change in circumstance, felt like the same man she'd shared quiet moments with. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Worlds had collided. Expectations were shattered and reformed. But as she looked at Alistair, truly Alistair, she saw not a billionaire enigma, but the quiet man who had sought refuge in her small corner of the world, and in doing so, had found a piece of hers. The silence that settled between them now wasn't about secrets withheld, but about a new, tentative understanding, a shared breath before an unknown path. He was still, in essence, the quiet man who liked her soup. And she, it turned out, was rather fond of the man who owned the jet, and the gentle soul hidden within. She took a sip of her iced tea, a small, hopeful smile playing on her lips. The view was certainly different, but the company, surprisingly, felt just right. He reaches for her hand then, his fingers, those same fingers she'd seen sketch and hold a spoon, lacing through hers. They're warm, strong, and reassuringly real. The sun begins to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and a sense of quiet anticipation settles over them. It's not an ending, Mia realizes, but a very unexpected, very bewildering, and perhaps, very wonderful beginning. Thanks for watching. If you believe in second chances and real love, give this story a like and subscribe for more.